Welcome to the Real Freedom Podcast, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Real Freedom. And today we have a wonderful guest with us. We've got Chad Willardson. And Chad is going to share a lot about financial freedom. He's an author. He's the author of the book Stress-Free Money. He's also the founder and president of Pacific Capital. He's an entrepreneur and would love for you guys to know that he's an elected official and is actually on the ballot here every 4 years. He's a father, he's a dad, a husband. And so we would love for you to just share a little bit more with us before we dig into your story about financial freedom. But thanks so much, Chad, for coming on. Why don't you give us a little bit more about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. I'm excited to be here. I'm definitely an entrepreneur. I was not an entrepreneur as a kid. I wasn't one of those kids who had 10 businesses, but I've become an entrepreneur and a very active investor in my career. I grew up in Orange County, California, as the oldest of four. And I right out of college, I had an internship in the financial investment management business, and I really liked it, but I was excited about investing, but I wanted to deal with people. And so that's how I got into wealth management. I started at Merrill Lynch in 2003. And then on 11/11/11, I actually left and started Pacific Capital. A little superstitious there with that date for good luck, but so we are a fiduciary for entrepreneurs, families, and investors. All of our clients definitely have real estate investments, and they've got great real estate advisors on their team, and that's obviously that's critical for success, is who you surround yourself with. But like you said, I'm a father of five. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm very passionate about expanding freedom between the freedom of time and the freedom of money and relationships, and the freedom of just basically not being stuck or obligated to do things you don't want to do because you haven't planned well. So I think that's why we're here talking. And I will say, I noticed the Minnesota Vikings football in the background.
Yes.
Vikings fan.
Minnesota guy. So all Minnesota sports. We've got your Twins bobbleheads. You've got your Super Bowl here in Minneapolis, Viking stuff, Timberwolves banner over there. So yeah, Minnesota sports fan through and through, for better and most often for worse. So.
Well, my connection to Minnesota sports, you ready for this?
Yeah.
My uncle played for the Vikings for 12 years.
Awesome.
So he was a first round pick out of USC and went to the Vikings. I think it was 1974 through 1986. Steve Riley, number 78. So played in a couple Super Bowls with Tarkenton and the famous coach, I think it was Bud Black, and has some crazy stories. Bud Grant, crazy stories playing out there in Minnesota. He's told me his whole life. So
Yep. And Bud still has every year he does an annual garage sale at his house, and so he's got some memorabilia and stuff like that. And so there's always the annual Bud Grant garage sale that takes place in Bloomington. So cool. He's an icon in Minnesota sports. I remember the year that the Metrodome, the roof collapsed because we had so much snow, and the Vikings were forced to play outside. And so there was a game where, gosh, I don't remember, how cold it was, but they had to move to the Gophers football stadium to be able to play outside. And so Bud's thing was always, he would never wear a coat or, he'd always have a light jacket. And so I was at the game in like parka, hat, gloves, you name it. And Bud comes out in like a t-shirt. So that's just his personality. So cool. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit first, talk about the book. Because I think probably everything that you do, those underlying principles come out through the book. So talk about Stress-Free Money. What prompted you to write it? And let's talk a little bit about the content in there.
Yeah. So I'll show the book here on the video here. Stress-Free Money. So the subtitle is Overcome the 7 Obstacles to Find Financial Freedom. And really what I wanted to do was encapsulate my almost 20 years of advising investors and entrepreneurs, and basically pick what are the top 7 roadblocks that people will face
Mm-hmm.
that prevent them to getting to complete financial freedom. And so as we look at those, the first obstacle, and it's just 7 chapters, 7 obstacles, but it's no clear goals. And I start with a quote from Zig Ziglar: "You can't hit a target you cannot see, and you cannot see a target you do not have." And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes investors make, is they get excited about an investment and they don't really have a clear goal. They don't have a plan. They just kind of are throwing money at the wind and they hope it works out. Oh, my buddy or my neighbor told me I should do this, and I think it worked for him, and so I should try it myself. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't really know what to do with your money if you don't have any clear goals. So really, it's like people will come to us and they'll say, "Hey, I have this big chunk of money in my bank account, and I've got all this stuff going on in my life. I've got these properties, I've got these retirement accounts. What do you think I should do? How could I do something better?" And the first question is, well, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
We can't really give advice until we know exactly what you're aiming for. Just like if you went to a doctor and they started prescribing pills, but they didn't really do a diagnostic check and really understand what's hurting, where you need help, then it would kind of edge on the side of malpractice. So having clear goals gives you just a destination and helps set the framework for knowing what to do with your money, for sure. One of the obstacles I would say that people really get caught up in is obstacle number 7. It's the last chapter. And it's all about letting your feelings get in the way. And it's kind of funny that I dedicated a whole chapter to feelings and emotions in a money book. But really, I think you could have the greatest financial strategy in the world, and you can have all kinds of real estate investments and stock market investments and have everything just going right. And then if you get caught up in the emotions of the moment, you could destroy that plan in 5 seconds. So Nick Murray says, investing is the age-old, never-ending emotional battle between fear of the future and faith in the future. So really talking about distinguishing between what's going to happen long-term versus what this moment, what the crisis and exciting, the greed or the fear or the hype, whatever is going on right now, that can really distract you. So my goal really was to help empower families, entrepreneurs, investors, and give them some tools and tips that I've seen clients use and that we've advised people on, to give them the confidence to make great decisions with their money and have less anxiety, I would say, and less stress, Mike, around money.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that you talk about, the first thing being the goal. and I used to, right out of college, I was going to be a financial advisor and ended up, off on a different path. But yeah, that's one of the questions that you have to ask is what is the end game for you? For some people, it might be, I want to live in a cabin in the woods and, find my own food, and I don't really have a need for money. Well, obviously the plan to get there is a lot different than I want to travel the world and see things and, have flights and hotels and this and that and the other, where there's a price tag that comes with that. And until you communicate that to somebody, you really don't know. And that price tag, like that's an actual dollar amount. Either you have that amount or you don't. And a lot of people, they're fearful that, well, what if I don't have enough money? Well, wouldn't you rather put a plan in place to try to get that, and find out, maybe I shoot for the moon and I end up a little bit shy of that, than to not even know if I'm going to the moon or to Mars or to Pluto. It's really important. You've got to have that destination and clarify those things, because then it's going to also help you in the short term. If I know that my end goal is I need this amount of money, I'm going to work hard towards that. And when struggles come up and obstacles get in my way, I'm going to work hard to push through that, because I know this is what I ultimately want.
Agreed. And I think that kind of plays into one other obstacle or chapter that I'll share. I'm talking about focusing on the wrong number. This is chapter 3.
Okay.
And focusing on the wrong number, what I see people often focus on is they're looking at just their total assets or their total net worth. And people get caught up in saying, well, I need to have 2 million. I need to have 5 million. I need to have 10 million or 30 million, whatever the number is. They get caught up with that number, or they get caught up in the number of what's my investment ROI for this year or for this quarter. And they become hyper focused on that percentage return. However, the number, and I think your listeners would agree with this and relate to it, is the number that you really need to focus on is your cash flow. You've got to actually really understand, what are my goals and lifestyle? What does that actually cost? And let's consider inflation over the next 10, 20, 30 years, which we believe is going to go up with all the government spending and borrowing. So you have to have a clear plan for your cash flow to really know, how much should I invest and in what assets should I be investing in. So I'm trying to find a quote in here that I had. Some of the key takeaways in that chapter essentially is, you've got to determine the actual cash flow number that you're aiming for. And we advise clients to plant a variety of trees, plant a variety of seeds for a variety of trees, a variety of fruits. I never want someone to be all in on just one specific type of investment. So, it's not like we're going to say you should have all of your money in technology stocks and depend on that for your cash flow and your retirement for the rest of your life. Or if you're a real estate investor, you should only have single family residences. There's no option to have commercial real estate or duplexes or apartments or other things like that. So really the goal is
cryptocurrency, which seems to be the hot topic right now, right?
It is. We get questions every day on that.
Yeah.
Put all of your money in a couple coins and you should be fine. I'm just kidding. But basically, plant the seeds today that can give you just a wide variety of trees, so that some things will be blooming and blossoming at different times. You have fruit coming over here, you'll have shade over here, and everything will balance out. But you've got to have multiple streams of income. We like to see our clients have at least 5 to 7 different streams of income as they prepare for kind of their later years where they're drawing income on their portfolios.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that also matters too. If you're invested in, a lot of times people have the nest egg, and I'm going to have the 4% rule where I draw 4% of that every year. Well,
Right.
If you're invested in things that have cash flows right now, like a residential real estate, well, that affects your end number, because you might be making, $100, $200, $300 a door.
Right.
If you have a rental portfolio, or if that loan's paid off, that thing's affected. So yeah, so having, like, I love your comment about different seeds planting different trees yielding different fruits. That's great, because each vehicle for financial freedom has different payoffs and has different rate of return, but that balance is what's really important.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Yes.
Yeah. Great. So share with me then. Let's talk a little bit about Pacific Capital. How did that come to be for you? And what's your target client? And then really, how has that business grown for you to help you provide your financial freedom personally?
Sure. So I spent 9 years at Merrill Lynch as an investment advisor there. We dealt with a lot of different clients from different backgrounds. Ultimately, I wanted to be an independent fiduciary. And as I saw, that's what wealthy entrepreneurs were really looking for. They wanted independent, objective advice. They were a little bit turned off by the big investment banks and the conflicts of interest, and a lot of stuff in the news that basically muddied the reputation of all these big firms. And so it made sense to basically say, how can I build a firm that's strictly based on our target client and what they need and want, and not based on how to help the big brokerage firms. So our target clients are entrepreneurs. They have busy lives. They have growth focused mindsets. They focus on planning and goals. They're not just transactional. They're looking for long-term relationships. Typically, they have income in the high 6 figures, 7 or 8 figures. So that's just our specialty. We deal with people that have a higher income. When we manage investments for people, that's the minimum investment account we'll open is $1 million, but our average is much higher than that. It's closer to 5. Okay. But our clients have businesses. They have real estate investments. We don't do that. We're not real estate agents. We don't do taxes. We don't draft tax returns, but we basically counsel on the whole strategy. So we'll work with our clients, real estate agents, their CPAs, their estate planning attorneys, and we'll help coordinate to make sure that all pieces of the financial puzzle are fitting nicely together. So our target, I wouldn't say it's not as financially restricted as it might sound. It's really more based on the mindset of clients. I will say this, our 6 of our last 9 new clients in the last 5 weeks have been outside of California, West Virginia, Florida, Georgia, Guatemala, and Seattle. Those I think are the 6 or 5 or 6 outside of California. So we can now with Zoom technology, we can really help anyone anywhere if they're a good fit, obviously. But that's a little background on the clients that we're working with.
So how did you go about finding these people? When, obviously you had a background, you probably had people that you had contacts and relationships with,
Yeah,
but going off on your own, it's similar, a lot of the people that listen to my podcast are in real estate in various forms. And so
right,
they're independent agents or independent business owners, entrepreneurs growing their business. And at
right.
some point, they might have switched brokerages, they might have switched vehicles of what their business is specializing in. So it's kind of all the same in entrepreneurship in terms of having to build a client base. So how did you strategize to build your client base?
It's a great question. I made a lot of great contacts while at Merrill Lynch, but that's not, I mean, that's a very small percentage of who we work with today.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, in the last 3 years, all of our clients really come from, I get a lot of new clients from LinkedIn.
Okay.
We have people who have read the book all over the place. The Guatemala client, very big business owner, owns a lot of sugar mills and different real estate things back in Guatemala and Florida. And he read the book in Guatemala, actually. He's native of there. Podcast interviews, I probably am interviewed 3 to 5 times a week from different podcasts all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, word of mouth from people that we know and clients that are happy. We have over 200 Google reviews, which are pretty descriptive, and people have shared their experiences on working with us. So I don't know that there's any one specific way that we found success in building a clientele, but it was more about just being reputable and doing what we
Mm-hmm.
say we would do every time. And it's just built upon that momentum. And now that I've been doing this almost 20 years, we don't do, I haven't done a seminar in 13 years. We don't do any mailers or anything like that. It's really our internet presence and reputation, and then word of mouth, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And how much of, just out of curiosity, how much of the book was a strategy to grow your business, and how much of it was just also to just sharing the wealth of wisdom that you've gained being in the business?
Yeah, I did not think that we would get a lot of new clients from the book. I actually
Really?
really didn't. No, I didn't. In fact, the publisher said, what is your pop the champagne moment of excitement with your book? And I said, if I have someone buy it, read it, and write a review on Amazon whom I've never met and have no connections to, I think that would really celebrate. And I was honest. I was like, that would be like really cool if someone random just bought the book and liked it. And, we hit a couple bestseller lists really quickly on Amazon. And then we started getting a good amount of incoming calls. And then I got a lot of podcast interviews, and probably did 60 podcast interviews the first 2 months after the book was published. And so it kind of snowballed from there. So I did not expect that.
Mm-hmm.
I really was just trying to make something. There's so many people that want to meet with us, but maybe they're not at the level to hire a fiduciary advisor yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, how can I share with them the best stuff I have in my head? And they could pay $10 for it, and
Right.
that was kind of the original idea of like, I want to get a book out because I can reach way more people than I could possibly talk to.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really expect it to bring a bunch of new clients like it has. And sometimes it's just someone sees us on LinkedIn and they're interested, and then they read the book, and it just kind of furthers along their desire to talk to us. So it wasn't maybe because of the book, but the book certainly shares how we feel about money, and they agree with it and they feel excited about it. And they say, you know what, financial people I'm talking to don't think like this. So I need to maybe reach out and schedule a meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what advice would you give to people, that aren't to your sweet spot yet, short of reading the book, implementing, starting with the end in mind, having a goal. But if somebody says, gosh, Chad, I'd really love to work with you. I know your average client is, $5 million.
Right.
in net worth. Like, what do I do from 0 to 4.99 to
Yeah.
get to where I can work with you? Like, what strategies or what advice would you give people kind of looking to
Well,
grow?
two things, and I'll be sure to clarify that. We can do financial planning for anyone. It's not cheap and it's not free, but you
Yep.
don't have to have a minimum income or a minimum net worth. We just won't invest the money for everyone.
Got it.
So we can build a financial plan. Currently, the cost is $5,400 a year. That's $425 a month. So we've had people who literally are 4 years out of med school or college, and they're just starting their career and their family, but they really are interested in creating a family financial plan, and they can hire us and they get access to, we're giving advice to people who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars sometimes, and they're getting the same quality of advice and expertise for $5,400 for the year. So you can do that part of our services no matter what level you're at, if you're willing to pay for it. And for business owners and entrepreneurs, you can use your business account. It's a write-off. It's advice and guidance that you can use for tax advantages. But the investing side, I don't think you need to hire a financial advisor to manage your investments unless you've got hundreds of thousands. Like, we can give you advice, and I'll tell you, you don't need to pay us to keep managing this. We might help you set something up at Vanguard and say, let's put this on autopilot for you as you build your investment expertise over time. And then maybe when it builds up big enough, you'll need to hire someone. But I don't like to tell people they need to pay for a financial advisor. If I look at their situation, I don't really think most people do. Most people who are in their early stages, 0 to 500,000, they probably don't. They probably don't need to pay anyone. So we just need to help them set it up the right way. Secondly, I would say my advice is save a good percentage and portion of every single paycheck you ever get as early as you can. We have a client they're retired teachers. One was a professor, one was a teacher, and they have millions in their retirement accounts, and they never made over $100,000, either of them. They simply saved and invested a portion of every paycheck since age 24. And it's just the compound interest effect and the consistency and the discipline has built the multi-million-dollar nest egg. So no matter how much you're earning, you should be putting something away for the future and investing it and planting those seeds today.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I worked for a nonprofit right out of college, and it was put the money aside, get the match from my employer, which I was fortunate enough to have, and build that habit. I think so many times people feel like, eventually I'm gonna hit the lottery from an income perspective where I get that job or I get that opportunity, and now all my wealth is going to grow. But the problem is if I spend just as much as I make, it doesn't matter if I make 50,000, 100,000, or $1 million. If I have a spender's mentality, I'm not going to be able to put anything aside. And so I think, a big principle is how to get to a big number is you have to have good habits with the smaller numbers. And that's how you build and grow. Because if I'm making 100 grand and I'm saving, $1,000, that's great. But if I'm making 200 grand and I'm still only saving $1,000, then that extra 100 grand in income hasn't helped me in the long run.
Correct. Yeah. And we teach that a lot, that financial literacy does not come because you get more money. You get more money because you become financially literate. So if you can't manage $100 very well, you're not going to manage $100,000 very well. And everyone procrastinates because they just believe that I just need to make X more. As soon as I make X more, then I'll start doing these habits. And that's just not true. You're just lying to yourself, and people ask, well, when should I start doing financial planning? I don't think I'm there yet. I don't make enough money to do financial planning. And I say, well, when should you get healthy and start exercising? Probably you should start today if you haven't started. There's no good benefit to procrastinating your personal health, your fitness, or your financial planning. There's no benefit to waiting. So get started, find a fiduciary that you can talk to and trust, and get some good independent counsel sooner rather than later.
Yeah. It comes down to making it a priority. Cause I heard on another podcast I was listening to where they talked about, okay, how do I start with getting, 6-pack abs. Well, it's probably somewhere in the middle of eat healthy and do some physical fitness to help, right? Like we all
Right.
start there. Well, how come not everybody has 6-pack abs? They just don't implement it, and
Right.
now
Right.
I get there's more complexity to that, but let's all agree it's some form of the amount of physical exertion and activity that I'm doing and some combination of what I'm putting in my body. And
Correct.
and I think also too, people giving themselves flexibility of, I don't have to be perfect at physical fitness today, but I
Right.
can start. And it's the same thing with money. Like I don't have to know all the ins and outs of cryptocurrency, or I don't have, like, and
Yeah.
not that, some people think that that's a great tool, but like it's the same thing. Like people think, oh, financial investing is so complex and I don't really know what to do. Well, like you said, just start with something with Vanguard, right? Like
Yeah.
Vanguard's a wonderful option. Put aside $100 a month, $250 a month, $500 a month, start there. And we can get more complex. We can get as complex as you want, but unless you're able to set aside the 100, the 500, the $1,000 a month to put into something, really you don't have a leg to stand on.
Great point.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about freedom, right? Because stress-free money brings freedom. So let's talk a little bit about the freedom aspect. The clients that you work with, the things that you've experienced over your 20 years helping people. What's out there for people that are like, oh, I'm just grinding right now. I'm struggling, and I want what's out there. Help whet the appetite of what's out there for people, how they can have that freedom and that peace when they implement some of these things and get their financial house in order.
A great statement. Financial freedom really should be the goal of everyone. And that really is the absence of worry about money. It's the ability to do what you want to do when you want to do it without having any obligations to pull you away. It doesn't equal laziness or sitting on the rocking chair on the porch. My clients are not doing that, but it allows them to explore what they really love to do. Maybe it's more time with their family. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's the hobbies or the businesses they've always wanted to start but couldn't afford to take the chance. Financial freedom comes when your investments produce more than you spend. It's pretty simple. And planting those seeds as soon as possible so you have those trees and paying that passive cash flow income. That's the key point. So you've got to understand, how much does my lifestyle cost? And what can I do to spread out the risk, balance my investments, and bring some cash flow in that will far exceed what I need to spend? Once you get to that point, you really do have a sense of almost like a lightness to your life. You don't have that dread of going to do something for a paycheck that you don't enjoy doing.
Mhm.
And I believe you can get to that point quicker by just forcing yourself to break through the procrastination and sitting down and planning. I see it all the time, especially our non-investment clients who maybe don't have millions of dollars, but it's been weighing on them. They know that they should have done financial planning a while ago. They come in, they're a little feeling like it's going to be overwhelming. They're
Mhm.
not really excited, but they know they need to do it. And then I see them within 2 or 3 weeks, and they are just completely different. Like the countenance has changed, the excitement about their future has changed. The motivation to be disciplined with their money has changed because they see the light at the end of the tunnel. They had someone look at it, and our team says, here are the 14 homework assignments you've got to do, and we're going to help you. But this is all the stuff that we can do for you quickly to get you into a much better situation where those goals are actually reachable. And so I believe that stress-free money is available for anyone who's willing to work for it. And you don't have to make a super high income to get there either. I know someone who's when he first came in, his wife passed away, and he was probably in his late 60s, and he said, I'm ashamed at how much money I'm spending every month. My wife would have been so disappointed in my recklessness.
Mhm.
I golf like 3 days a week, and I'm eating out all the time. And it turns out the guy was spending $2,200 a month. He wasn't. I was expecting this huge number, and he said, I can't believe it. I'm spending $2,200 a month. So it doesn't take millions upon millions upon millions to get to a place of financial freedom where you're not worried about money.
Mhm.
And you can start having those benefits sooner if you're prepared and you're planning and you have some success habits in place right away. You start to relieve that burden of anxiety, of the uncertainty. I don't know if I'm doing is right. I don't know how much I need to save. I don't know if my investments are doing any good. So you can start now by really just getting a plan together rather than waiting and wondering, am I going to be okay in the end?
Mhm. It's just like, people talk about not wanting to step on the scale because they don't want to know how much they weigh.
True.
And and if you have a goal around that, like you at least need to know where you're at. And so whether the number is higher or lower than you want it to be, you kind of need to know the number. And it's the same thing with money. Whether you're on track or you're off track, the first thing is knowing what that number is. And we talk about this on our real estate team, because I'm working with them about tracking their net worth regularly. It might not be the number that you want today, but wouldn't you rather know today, so that you can start working towards it instead of 6 months from now or a year from now, then knowing the number and realizing it's not what you want it to be. And you still have to take the steps to try to get there. And
Right.
so better to find out now. So I love what you're saying. And when people see success, they get more excited and then they want to take
Perfect.
more steps and then they see more success. So then they want to do the same thing. And it's just this cycle of good, because they're seeing the progress, they're seeing the impact that that's making by taking those right steps.
And happiness, Tony Robbins says it a lot. He says happiness comes from making progress. And progress comes, it only starts with telling the truth and facing the brutal facts. So you have to step on that scale, like you said, and you have to find out where you stand before you can know what needs to be changed. So, but the progress, making progress, even baby steps, in 6 months, you can feel great about your financial life because you have actual, you know where you're headed and you know how to get
Mhm. How has this journey impacted you personally? Working for a large company, starting your own firm, now writing this book, helping people with money. Talk about kind of your success journey along the way.
So I started out, I was married with one child. I have 5 kids now, but when I started at Merrill Lynch, in my second year, we had our first kids. So I was married with one child, living in Southern California, and making just over $3,000 a month before taxes, which
Mhm.
was a big struggle. I was working at night trying to do my marketing and my business planning and meet new potential clients, and it was very difficult. But I still saved something out of every paycheck. I
Mhm.
started out, I think, at $30 per paycheck I was investing and saving. And I've just built on that. Every time my income has grown or something's happened, a good, financial success for me, I've added more money to that investment growth. In 2009, before I started my own business, I started investing in real estate. And that was just after obviously the Great Recession. So everything
Mhm.
around here, the Western US was, seems like a short sale or foreclosure everywhere. And so my wife and I invested in nearly 30 properties, duplexes and homes, and um, a couple multifamily investments back 2009 to 2013. And those are great. I was just telling someone the other day, I said it wasn't amazing at first. They all had cash flow, positive
Mhm.
cash flow, but now it's amazing. I mean, it's been 12 to almost 12 years since we started. And a lot of these properties are paid off and they're worth way more than what we paid.
Mhm.
And so I practice what I preach for sure. I have investment accounts that I pay into every single week, automatically saving into my investment accounts. I've got retirement accounts. I've got multiple businesses I'm investing in, and we're investing in real estate. So I think having different sources of income has been a great blessing. And if we've ever learned anything from the last year in the pandemic, it's that you can't rely on one source of income and
Mhm.
feel like you're steady.
Yeah.
It's not steady, and you never know. And so you really have to diversify yourself as much as you can.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a lot of people, if sometimes people have said like have 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up. in case a rainy day comes. Like there's a lot of financial wizards out there that talk
Yep.
about that. Well, what has challenged us this last year is, yeah, what if you actually need 12 months,
Yeah,
of
sure.
something saved up? Because, who would have pictured a global pandemic happening? And
Right.
so, more than ever having, and the problem is you're not going to know that it's happening until it's happened. Right.
True.
And so we don't know when the next global pandemic is going to happen. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years, but better to have planned ahead, and have that rainy day fund so that you can adjust versus that, wiping you out and not being able to survive. So yeah,
Absolutely.
more than anything, it showed us the importance of saving, wise investments, good money habits, so that you have a strong financial future.
Absolutely. Great point.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Chad, for coming on. We really appreciate it. For those folks that, have loved what they heard, they want to check out Stress Free Money, and learn more about you and Pacific Capital, how can they do that?
I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I'm posting daily there. You can follow me there, and pacificcapital.com is our website. So if you want to schedule a free goals conversation from wherever you are in the world, you can do it right there on our site.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you sharing with everybody.
Thank you.